Hello, everybody. Welcome to our weekly broadcast in Beneath the Surface. Today, I am so happy to have Kristina Kashtanova joining me to talk about her art and her mission. I don't know if you follow her on Facebook or Instagram, but it is fascinating. She just got back from Burning Man. There's amazing photos that you should check out. And so I'm so happy to have her here with me today because one of the things that I've noticed about Kristina's work and the words that she puts with all of her work is that everything is so mission-based, and she's so much about inspiration in everything that she does. So I really was so happy that she agreed to join us today to talk about all of that and to talk about rooting your art and your career in that mission. So I want to turn things over to Kristina, really just to start off by giving us a background of you as an artist and what has sort of brought you here today, because you have an amazing story that I've gotten pieces of in following you on social media, but I don't even know everything that you've really brought to the table to be here today.
So hello, and thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
I really enjoy this group. I'm quite new to it. I've been following Jan for only maybe 3 or 4 months, and I absolutely loved how engaged and supportive this group is.
Me too.
It's an honor to be here with you today.
Thank you.
So I live in New York City currently.
Hello, New York.
And I'm not from New York, obviously. I've been here for just 2 years, and before moving to New York City, I lived 5 years in London, the UK, which was amazing. And that is where my creative journey has started. I was born in Russia, and I'm Russian. I haven't been to Russia for quite a number of years. And yeah, I was doing many professions in my lifetime. I started from being a software engineer, and I was doing it for 10 years.
Wow.
I was an awful software engineer.
Why?
It wasn't just my thing. I really tried to become a good one, but it just didn't work. I still kind of don't understand why I was so bad. But eventually I realized that it's not something that I want to do with my life. So I was quite lucky that I had an opportunity to study a second profession, which was journalism in London. And while I was doing journalism, I discovered photography. And after that, there was no way back.
You were stuck as a photographer after that.
Yes, I love it.
What was it about photography specifically? Because, and I know we have a very eclectic group here, so everybody comes from a lot of different backgrounds, but it's very interesting to hear software engineer to journalism to photography. Like I think I understand journalism and photography like are actually very connected, but for you, what was it about photography specifically that drew you?
So I think when you work as a software engineer, you pretty much communicate with only your computer. That's it. You don't have that many friends. And even if you have friends, you would probably sit in front of your computers and play some game. And I always wanted to have friends. I always wanted to have connections with real people, but I was absolutely debilitating shy. I would be so afraid of rejection and that people wouldn't like me, wouldn't want me in their company, that I usually had 1 or 2 friends, but it didn't last for too long.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started doing journalism, I was forced to actually go and interview people, which was terrifying.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was really, really scary, but I had to do it, otherwise I would fail. So when I started doing that, I realized that I really like taking photos of these people. And I needed those photos for my articles, because when you write an article about someone, it's nice to have some nice photographs of people or of some environmental issue.
Mm-hmm.
So I started taking those, and I really enjoyed photography. It was not good, but people were so kind. They would give me so many compliments. And now looking back, I'm like, we have a lot of kind people in this world. And it just kept me going, and little by little my interest to photography just completely took my life. And I was still doing journalism, but my all my free time, and not free time as well, I would try to photograph and join different creative communities. And since then, it was just driving me. Yeah.
Really. And so I think it's really interesting that for you, photography started as a way to connect with people. I mean, it was obviously something to complement the writing that you were doing. But when I look at your writing, when I look at your images, connection is really the thing that I see kind of coming through. And so I find it interesting that that's something that was kind of at the core of your beginnings as an artist.
Yeah, I think it still is, because
Yeah.
I just feel it shifted a little bit in past 2 years, from just connecting with people to connecting to myself as well.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I almost didn't acknowledge that there was one more person right here to connect with.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What was that journey for you like in terms of letting yourself be a part of that artistic experience? Like, how did you even start bridging that gap?
So I usually I liked writing a lot. I still do, and I just started feeling that if I take a photo of someone else and I would put my story there, it, it's not very fair to the person on the picture, because and I really had something to say, and I started just having this urge to share my thoughts. And
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, if I would create self-portraits, it would be more fair to the viewer and to the person on the photo if I just kind of bring it together
Mm-hmm.
myself. And also, I think there were several things that were happening in my life. I was moving from one country to the other, and it was a difficult transition. My friendships were changing, and my whole world was turning upside down. And I felt um, it was hard to share how I felt, but
Mm-hmm.
their self-portraiture had such a healing effect on me. I would get up every morning and I would go outside and spend those some few minutes with myself. And then I would come back and things would feel much better, because I would switch my mind from
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah, so it had a very healing effect on me. And since I started doing, obviously, I could see my conceptual photographs were so bad. I don't even understand why they were so bad at the beginning, because I really, really tried. And I was really humbled, and I started learning it, and I just wanted it to look decent, so people wouldn't just look at it and be like, oh, that's terrible, terrible, terrible work. So it took a while, and I am still on a journey. I'm still learning. I'm still finding my voice in my
Mm-hmm.
self-portraits, and but it was very healing. I'm so grateful for
Yeah. I,
finding it.
I think it's so interesting too to kind of hear in the beginning you start as a software engineer who is so shy and who doesn't really want to reveal that inner self to an artist that almost feels called to do so. You know, that's a really beautiful journey to just hear about. because I think that a lot of us can really relate to that crippling shyness that maybe still permeates a lot of our work. I know for me, it's still something that I deal with every day. And so to hear somebody else who's maybe you haven't fully overcome it, but certainly just the process that you've brought yourself on to be able to be where you are is very inspiring. So one thing that I find really interesting about your work is that there's a lot of different genres that you explore right now. So there's movement, and in it there's this subgenre of yoga. You have portraiture, and then you do your self-portraits as well. And they all seem to kind of inform each other a little bit. And I'm curious to know how you're able to do that, because sometimes I think a lot of us, we create in silos. You know, like, oh, this is my headshot work over here, and this is my personal work over here. And I always find that it's the strongest artists are the ones that are able to have their voice permeate through all of it. So how do you find those connections between the different areas of your art?
So I was actually thinking a lot about it recently because the first genre I started being passionate about when I started my photography was actually photographing wildlife, and in particular insects.
Okay.
I was just obsessed with those.
Mm-hmm.
Then it moved into people. I'm very happy about it because I don't think everybody really enjoyed seeing my gigantic spiders. But people again were kind. They would say, "Oh, that looks ugly, but you really photographed it well." um, so I just feel it's just the way I am. I have lots of interests, and I try to restrict myself, but it never really worked.
Uh-huh.
I also feel I like photography because there are so many fields in it. If you feel like you can't do particular thing at the particular moment of time, you can explore something else.
Mm-hmm.
For example, movement photography, like fitness photography, it has seasonal quality to it because when winter comes, it becomes so cold that you can't really photograph professionally dance or ballet or yoga outside because people get really cold and they're not as flexible.
Right.
And sometimes it's a cool photo to have someone in the snow, but it wouldn't be everyday occasion to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So having conceptual photography really solves this problem because first I can photograph myself and I don't have to ask anyone to be tortured in a cold climate. And second, I can just work on my computer and create those worlds from my head
Mm-hmm.
when I can't go outside. And then, of course, photography is currently my full-time job, which means I also have to find ways to make my living doing photography.
Mm-hmm.
Back in London, I was actually mostly doing headshots. It was my bread and butter. And I just found for me headshots was a very good thing to do because I almost had like a therapy session with this client because it it felt like everyone was so shy about their body image.
Yes. Yeah.
Just to make them feel a little bit better about themselves, and then when they feel relaxed to take their portrait, it was very nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I just feel it somehow is connected by the fact that it's made by the same person with the same life goals and
Mm-hmm. So you're not feeling like, I think one of the reasons that I ask is my background in marketing tells us that you have to have your niche. And I think a lot of us as artists struggle with this because
very, very good advice.
we're told that we have to be categorized. And yet, I think for a lot of people, it's so hard because your interest is so broad.
Yeah, I feel it's the right thing to do if you can do it.
Yeah.
I just simply can't. I didn't find a way to categorize myself, and trust me, I did try. I I really did try to be very, very consistent what I photograph. And what I found is that sometimes I would miss out on opportunities.
Mm.
For example, I passionately love photographing my close friends. It's something I love doing, and I love doing it a lot. I have thousands of photos of each friend of mine. They must think I'm really crazy, but I just photograph what I love, and I love them so much that I want to capture that.
Mm-hmm.
So saying that, when I focus on my commercial work, sometimes if I tell myself, oh, I need to have a priority, I may miss out an opportunity to capture something very important. So I stopped doing that. I just photograph what I feel matters to me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, occasionally, it has a good benefit because I get hired to do very different type of work because people see that I can potentially probably do it.
Right. So, with the commercial side of your work right now, you're not just doing headshots. You've sort of branched out a little bit.
Well, I actually, since I lived in New York City, I completely stopped doing headshots, and it was not intentional at all. I actually am still trying to to start. It's just for headshots business, you need to be in the city all the time, not travel.
Mm-hmm.
And second, it's quite a disciplined business because you need to be available and everything needs to be ready. And it's very easy to build a headshots business that is working because it's quite a simple model and everyone needs headshots. But since I moved to New York, I was actually having different job opportunities, which were like I was so busy doing those that I didn't really have time to build my tiny headshot business. But I am going to bring it back, I promise. In December, I'm planning to finally get back to New York and settle for a little bit. And I'm thinking to do it because it just had such a beautiful effect on me to be with a person and to relax them, to make them feel good, and then to take rather simple photographs that would bring them jobs.
Yeah.
And it's just I think headshots is a very good purpose-driven business. It's not just money. It's definitely helping everyone, including myself. So.
Yeah. And I think what's so special about the way that you describe it is that you're looking at it from that connection point of view, and you're looking at it as you have a mission to be able to connect with those people. Whereas I think that a lot of businesses, especially in New York City, could kind of just treat it as like a client mill, just get people in and out, quick, quick, quick.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings me to another question, which is, well, first of all, what is the commercial work that you're doing right now if you're not doing headshots? And then how is it that you're able to imbue that sense of mission for you in commercial work too?
So in past 2 years, I mostly photographed clients, and those clients were asking me to do mostly yoga photo shoots.
Mm-hmm.
I even photographed one wedding and one engagement
Mm-hmm.
and a couple of couples. It's not something that I normally do. I don't have a big experience of doing that, but I did have this type of work too. And I wish I could do more of it because I really enjoy doing it. It's nice to photograph beautiful moments full of love, so it's aligned with me.
Mm-hmm.
But most of my work was coming from yoga teachers I photographed, from yoga magazines.
Mm-hmm.
Then this is a complete mystery to me, but I did have a lot of brands to photograph. And some of those brands were really tiny, tiny contracts, like $100 contracts. And some of them were so big that I just couldn't believe someone is ready to pay so much money for so little time and for so little work. I just think uh, they really invest much more money into that than they should. But it was going good. I'm just finishing my very last commercial brand project, and I'm thinking of not taking any more because it was just my life turned into like this advertising world.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've done too much of advertising stuff, and now I need to actually move into my business and maybe do headshots business and other things. But that was mostly it.
Heather has a question. She first says, "Hello, my dear," but then she also said, "How do you find the grants?" And I think, Heather, maybe you mean, how do you find the brands? She says, "Is there a web page site that you go to or something else?" Now,
So
Kristina, you were saying it was sort of a mystery how they came about.
So there are. I will share with you. Let's say two ways. First way is completely useless. It's even useless for me anymore. But some of you know I have a lot of followers on Instagram. That doesn't work anymore. The algorithm of Instagram changed, so the engagement dropped. But I think people still find me because of that, because of my Instagram followers.
Mm-hmm.
And very often I get emails on my email account, and sometimes they would just offer you a product. And if it's something I feel like I would do, for example, I got an amazing raincoat that I really needed. They didn't pay me money, but the raincoat is amazing and I use it. But sometimes they would suggest some payment. But I would say this way of getting this type of jobs is it's only dependent on your social media followers. And right now it's not relevant anymore because first it's incredibly hard to grow, and second the engagement changed and the social media itself makes it incredibly hard for small businesses to advertise.
Mm-hmm.
They suggest you to get sponsored posts, but the truth is those sponsored posts don't work because people just switch them off. I mean, I do. I don't like sponsored posts, and it just that side isn't working anymore. It worked for me because I joined a few years ago, and it was still social media was still growing, Instagram was growing, and they did really care that people would post stuff and they would do it. But now they don't anymore. They just commercialize all of it. And another thing which is a little bit more helpful for people who want to do something like this, there is a website I am currently signed in with. It's very small campaigns in terms of like some payment is so little. It would be like $40. But the good thing about it is that if you continuously photograph things like this, other brands see you do this kind of work and they can reach out and they can actually hire you to do a big campaign. So what I'm going to do after this talk, I will put together a PDF file for people or a doc file, I don't know yet, but some kind of file that people can download and will have like useful information how to earn money doing photography.
Yeah, that would be great. So you do have a very robust Instagram following. I think you have like more than 50,000 followers. So was that something that kind of grew naturally for you over time? And then brands saw that and looked at you as an influencer and decided they wanted to hire you for different sponsorships. And now,
So,
like you said, the algorithm is changing, so that business model will change.
so I have to say, To be honest with you, it was growing really fast and really consistently when I lived in London.
Okay.
Because in London we have this community called At London that has millions of followers. And what they do, they usually feature local photographers,
Mm.
and thousands of people know about you and they would follow you.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to work while the algorithm was different. Because the way the algorithm used to work is if you had only one famous friend, you would be famous too. Wow, I actually am very happy it's not working that way anymore because I think it's unfair.
Right.
Um, it's not working like that anymore. Since I moved to New York City, my work honestly was getting better, but my number of followers was dropping down.
Mm.
Wasn't dropping down that much. It was, I would say, it was dropping and gaining so equally that it was just the same.
Yeah.
And what I figured out recently is that most of my followers back in London and everywhere else, they were following me for fitness work, for yoga work, for dance work. So
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I post a circus photograph, I get thousands of likes. And what I realized to myself, even though it's very nice to get thousands of likes, it's not really thousands of likes for my work. It's
Mm-hmm.
thousands of likes for this circus performers' work because
Right.
they do amazing things.
Right.
So I shifted from that, and now I post portraits and I post more meaningful work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very rarely gets to that number.
Yeah.
Almost never. But few things this year that happened. I went to a few places and I met few photographers that incredibly inspired me. That I chose for myself to forget about likes or followers and post things that I feel are true to me
Mm-hmm.
and just see what happens. Because I believe there are different ways of building photography business, and social media, the problem of it is that they hire you not because of your skill, they hire you because of your reach, because of
Mm-hmm.
your popularity.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm very unpopular. So sometimes they hire me almost by accident because they still think I am.
Right. Well, Heather says that she's going to consider you her famous friend. And then another, well,
He's my famous friend too.
another Heather in our group says, what areas of having lived in different countries helps you in creativity with your photography? And you travel a lot too. So, I mean, it could be not just having lived in a place, but even visiting a place too, I think would be interesting to hear.
You know, to be honest, I found that for me personally, even though different locations are incredibly inspiring, but I think when I settle somewhere and when I explore the area just near me,
Mm-hmm.
that is most helpful for me because I feel like if you just use another location to bring attention to your work, it's almost like my circus example. It's not really you.
Mm-hmm.
It is you in a way. You got there, you took photos. But if you can create a work in a simple field that would tell a story, that is so much more powerful. And that's why I was inspired by photographers who have very little resources, but they would create these magical things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like in my case, traveling is definitely very pleasant, but it's stressful. It's stressful to travel. It's enjoyable to travel, but my mind would be always distracted with all the things that even when I travel, I try to find those places where I feel calm and peaceful and I can just be there and then I photograph. It wasn't always like that, but I discovered for me that's what's working best, the
Mm-hmm.
trip.
Yeah. So can you share for us how you began to really root your work in missions? Because a lot of your work is, or at least when I'm reading the captions on your work, it's really talking about, again, connection, but also really supporting the LGBTQ community. And also you work with suicide prevention groups as well, and donate proceeds to the Light Space, which is Brooke Shaden's school that helps women get out of sex trafficking. So, I mean, the amount of mission in your work is just amazing to me. And I'm curious to know, what has that looked like? Because I think that a lot of us can get really caught up in just trying to survive and make money from our work. And for you, you've been able to kind of move beyond, I mean, not move beyond making money necessarily, but find that higher calling in everything that you do. And I find that really inspiring. So I would love to hear about that journey.
So I will try to kind of divide this into three parts. First one, why I started doing it. Mm-hmm. Second part is how I managed to do it. And third part, everything else I just forgot to categorize.
Okay.
So first one is, I think I was genuinely at the beginning, when I was born and when I was raising up and everything, I was a kind person to start with, but I kind of didn't act on it that much. I did not really leave that kind part of me, that compassionate part of me, until I started meeting people who really lived that way, helping others. And I started seeing there is another side of the world when people just help without asking anything in return. And then I was in deep emotional pain for quite a long time when I moved to New York City. I think moving to New York City was such a tragic event to me that I couldn't really overcome it. It was like everything was falling apart and I was feeling depressed, and people were just coming to help me, to rescue me, to be there for me. And they still are in my life and we are still close friends. And it was incredible for me to see how I'm struggling so much, and so many people come around and just try to hold me, to hold space for me, to support me emotionally, even though they didn't have much emotional resources themselves. It was people who would need support themselves, but they were giving me that thing, that supportive words, kind words, checking on me, and stuff like this. And then I remember once I was just in a very deep pain, laying in my room, and I needed to get up and to go and do my job because my savings were running out, and I actually needed to like sort myself out and stand up. But all I could do, I was just laying almost like paralyzed. My heart was hurting, and I remember I reached my phone and I picked like a random book from iBooks and I purchased it, and I opened like the random page of that book and I started reading it. And the book was Marianne Williamson, and it was called Tears to Triumph or something like this. And I was like, wow, this is brilliant. This is just like me. And I remember I was reading and reading, and there was one phrase that just struck me, and I think that was it. It said, if you feel pain right now, if you're in deep pain right now, remember how it feels. Like, remember how exactly it feels. And if you overcome it, which I hope you will, you need to make sure that no other person will ever feel that way. I was like, wow, I've never felt pain in such a level before. I definitely don't want anyone else to feel that. And after that, I started making changes in my life, because now when I do something, I remember that feeling and I think, oh, if this person, maybe this person feels that way right now, and I don't want anyone to feel that. So, and I did a yoga teacher training, and while I was doing the yoga teacher training, I had an incredibly compassionate teacher who's 75 years old. She's the kindest woman I've ever met. And she just inspired me to seek. She told me very important things. She said, go and take photographs for people who need your photographs. And I wanted to take her portrait, and she let me take her portraits, but she wouldn't agree to take portraits in a studio setting, and I wanted it so much. And she said, you need to look for people who need your photos. There are so many who would love you to take their photo, and they really, really need it, and it will help them. And it was such a big lesson for me. And I started seeking that, and I also started seeking other ways to help people, not just through photography. And that one, I mean, my life, I just meet right people. I met this guy, and he's completely blind. He was born blind. And he is doing fantastic. He has an amazing career. He's great. So I met him, and I thought, okay, how am I going to introduce myself? I can't say, Kristina, I'm an artist. I do these photos. Doesn't know what the photo is. So I just spent time with him, and I thought I need to find other ways to connect with people who don't really connect through photographs, and that's how I started the suicide prevention line. It's the first amazing job volunteering I've ever done. It's amazing. And I keep talking about it, and I keep sharing it with only one sole purpose, because it brings me so much fulfillment that I feel if other people try it, it will bring fulfillment to them. It's not for everyone, definitely, because it can trigger your own feelings. If you have something unresolved, it's definitely not for you. But if you just are seeking for purpose of life or fulfillment, there are so many things like this, not just suicide prevention line. There are many other things you can do, and it just brings so much fulfillment and so much good emotion. That yeah, it was great.
Yeah. So how do you find that balance then in your life between supporting yourself and then supporting your soul? Because I do see there is some crossover there, but obviously, like, we all have to make money and keep a roof over our head. And working for brands, for example, may not always have the ability to fulfill you on that personal connection level. So how are you making space for both of those?
So first of all, well, I'm not living by myself, which is a big part, because I don't think at this point in my life I could rent an apartment in Manhattan and rent it by myself. If I could, I would do that. But at the same time, when I think about it, and when you start thinking about other things, I just start feeling like it's so much money that I could spend elsewhere. I could help someone, and I could invest this money in some project that is better than just giving it to someone for rent.
Right.
But I'm lucky that I have a very close friend. We've been together for 16 years, and we share this apartment together. And we both are software engineers. That's how we met.
Okay.
The difference is he loves what he does. He's passionate about it, and he loves software engineering. And the thing is, we live together, which means if I can't make enough money, he wouldn't kick me out of this place. And it's a big enough place. I do have my studio upstairs where I can work during winter. But I just have a super supportive friend who has my back for now.
Mm-hmm.
I do try my best to earn like as much as I can, so I wouldn't just use him for my living situation. But it
Mm-hmm.
definitely makes a big difference because he's stable. I know that he's not going to kick me out. He lets me work, and when I can pay, I do. And when there are like dead season in winter, he just doesn't mind me just working on my future projects.
Mm-hmm.
In future, I really hope that I will be able to be more independent in that. But at the same time, he doesn't mind sharing with me, and um, yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say I have a safety net with my close friend, which is amazing. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that many artists don't have it, but also I know many artists do have it, but they don't mention it.
Yeah.
And it makes a wrong impression because
Yes.
honestly, I think I could survive being an artist, but I would have to do much more jobs that I wouldn't want to do.
Yeah.
But because I have a little bit of freedom, I still do quite a lot of jobs that maybe I wouldn't say they are not aligned with me, but I would say I maybe would choose something else if I didn't have to earn money at all.
Right.
But it gives me a little bit of flexibility. For example, if I see that the client is incredibly um, terrible to gay people and the client asks me to only photograph white straight males and it would be basically the request, I would just say no to that. And I would say,
Mm-hmm.
that's not who I am. I'm sorry. But if I didn't have the safety net, I would probably have to take jobs like this because
Yeah.
of survival.
Yeah, this reminds me of the talk that we had with Anna Bruce a few weeks ago, where it's like for those of us that want to create art, whether it's through commercial work or a side job or a full-time job, having something that creates a safety net for you and your art is really important.
Yeah.
I appreciate your sharing about yours because you're totally right. So many artists don't. And then it does give this false impression that, you know, so and so is able to make so much money and they're doing great. And we're all like, what's wrong with us that we can't do the same thing and we can't get there?
No, I mean, my personal, like, if I could give advice to myself right now, um, I do have few life goals right now, which are a little bit, they slow me down in a way. I can't really have another job on the side because it really now my creativity, my art takes my whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm thinking of, and I came to it because first I was doing software engineering, then I was doing journalism, and all this creativity was on the side.
Yeah.
And I actually thought how wonderful it will be if I just have my creativity.
Yeah.
Now I went a full circle, and what I really think is for me, it will be incredibly helpful to have a job that is not connected to photography or arts at all, but
Mm-hmm.
it does connect to my life and soul purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very lucky that I discovered that it's not just photography and I like.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I do like social work, I do like psychology, I do like well being of humans. That's the
Mm-hmm.
whole point. So I'm trying to find another branch that I could maybe study really quickly and get a job there.
Mm-hmm.
I feel when we just do creativity, it almost becomes stagnant because we
Yes.
don't have anything else.
Yeah.
It's good to have different activities.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that unless you have a wellspring of feedback and a lot of life experience, it does become really hard to push your creativity forward.
yeah,
I know that I've talked to some people that like if you create from a place of pain, as you're processing something, once you've healed from that pain, you can kind of get stuck in this mentality that unless I'm in pain, I can't be creative. So yeah, having outside experiences, whether it's an outside job or just other ways to stay connected with the world, I do think is really important.
Yeah.
So we had talked a little bit about connecting with other brands, but one other thing that has struck me about watching you in social media has been how much you collaborate with other artists. And again, it's so interesting to me that at the beginning we talked about that fear of connection and how when you were a software engineer you didn't connect, and now when I look at your photographs, you're collaborating with so many people. So I would love to hear how you do that, and then also what your advice would be to artists who might be stuck in that place of being too shy to reach out and collaborate.
So back in London, when I lived in London, I was very, very lucky because London has a very supportive and big photography community.
Mm-hmm.
Photographers just love meeting each other. Even if they would take completely different genre of photos, they would still support your work. They would like every photo you take. They would write how amazing it is. It's incredible. I think part of why I started doing it, and at the beginning when I was so bad, I kept pushing myself, was because of that community. Because honestly, they were accepting, they were non-judgmental, basically like this group. That you probably think there'll be a bunch of people who will be on the same wave and they'll say how awesome it is. And now I see that actually it is awesome. But at that time, I did need this, like a little bit of validation.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when I was doing journalism, I was doing journalism for 3 years. And I figured out an interesting thing. Actually, people are quite nice, most people.
Most people are.
Most people are. I mean, especially in America and in Canada and in the UK. And it's just every time I would step there and I would have an interaction with them, I would feel really inspired and I would feel really good. And it was always just difficult to do this first step, and then it wasn't that scary anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to actually meet people and photograph with them, and just I think what I'm really curious about, I love how other people's minds work.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about their photography, it's more about their minds, because I try to understand my mind and just to see how they create and what they're passionate about, and maybe being a small part of it. I just love. It's almost like someone else's magical world, and they let you come into it for a little bit and experience it for a little bit, and then you can leave with all the lessons you learned, and you can go to another world and learn something about it. And I do feel artists are amazing. It's just you can learn something from just watching some person work. And I started I started just engaging more with people. And sometimes I have to say, conceptual photography is a little bit different from other fields, because here I think people are a little bit more, they like solitude more and they like creating by themselves. So it's really difficult to gain that trust that you are a safe place and all you want to do is to be their friend. And so it takes like gentle steps and lots of patience, but there are a lot of conceptual artists who would become your great friend, and not just in photography but in real life as well, because I feel like photography connects us so we can have real life experiences. We can go on a hike, we can have a conversation with a cup of tea. It doesn't even have to be photography. So I would just recommend to get curious about other people's work. And I feel like everyone likes kindness, and everyone likes when someone follows their journey and pays attention. So if you have artists you admire, um, you need to tell them about it. And it's always nice to tell people that you admire their work. And some of those people may become your friends. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think that the hardest part is to get over that shyness, and to really be able to connect, especially because I think a lot of the photographers in this group are those conceptual photographers. So we kind of stay up here a lot, and it can be a scary thing to say, yeah, come into my crazy world, and we'll be non-judgmental together.
And it's also interesting that to understand that everyone is like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like someone needs to make a tiny first step, or at least open that door and say, I really like your work. I wish we could have a cup of coffee together. And you can wait. You sometimes can wait for 5 years or for 3 months. And you know what's great? The thing is, conceptual photography world, it's really small. And if you go somewhere, you're very much likely to meet all the conceptual photographers in one place.
Yes, Heather, in fact, said she can't wait to meet both of us in October at Brooke Shaden's Promoting Passion convention. So that's like a perfect example of a lot of us very shy kind of people getting together to make our emotional conceptual work.
Some people can't really go to like conventions or conferences, and it shall not stop you. You can just reach out on social media. And I've had so many collaborations with people who did not live in the same city, because we have a superpower. We have Photoshop. We can bring ourselves together without even meeting each other.
That's so interesting. I never even thought of some of your collaborations as being across lines.
There are many people I have never met in my life. We just took photos together and we merged them in Photoshop.
That's so cool.
There is this guy actually I'm so looking forward to meet, Lawrence.
Yeah.
Lawrence is amazing because he is like my photography community in London, but for my writing. My writing was so bad, and Lawrence was the only human being in the world who had patience to read it and say how awesome it is. So Lawrence is a photographer, and we created images together we've never met each other before.
Wow.
And we developed such a great friendship, and finally we'll meet in October, and we can't wait to actually create things in real life. Yeah, it's very exciting.
That's really cool and very inspiring too, because I think that a lot of us can get caught up in the lack mentality, and you mentioned really appreciating photographers that actually don't have access to a lot of resources. And even this idea of not having access to a friend to collaborate with in person is sort of like that lack of resource, but finding creative ways to overcome that is really inspiring. I never even thought of doing something like that. I think that's really cool.
I also feel what I can add is that was a very big discovery for me personally, that when I came to conceptual photography and to the world of self-portraits, I actually was already working as a commercial photographer. I had a lot of models and I had a lot of people around me because I always lived in a big city. But when I got to know conceptual photographers, I realized that a lot of them take self-portraits just because there are no models available. And I felt, wow, how lucky I actually am that I have all these models available. And I started photograph myself just because I wanted to start liking myself a little bit more, accepting myself. But if I did not want to, I could reach out to any other person and they would be my model. But I think self portraits and conceptual photographers are incredible because they're so resourceful. They can use one model, which is yourself, and very, very little resource. You can just have a field and create anything there, or their white wall and create everything there. And you don't even have a wardrobe. You can use a sheet, and that's it.
Yeah.
Or I'm so impressed by so many conceptual photographers who were doing it for quite a long time and they developed their skill. And when I ask them about the journey from the beginning, how they started, it's amazing to see how little they actually had at the beginning. And now they have all those locations. But if you look back, most of them just had their room and maybe their backyard or a field somewhere, and they were working very hard for many years to develop their style. So I'm deeply inspired, and I try to remind myself when I feel like I lack something. I say, well, actually, I have so much. I have so much more than any of those role models that I have.
Yeah. And I love how you said that you use self-portrait as a way to learn to love yourself. I think that a lot of us struggle with the idea of seeing ourselves on camera, you know, no matter how beautiful we think somebody is or how perfect they are looking to us. They probably struggle with a lot of the same lack mentality of like, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not skinny enough. You know, and so being able to use self-portraiture as a way to heal that, I think that's such a beautiful idea. Yeah. So I'm curious to know, because you have such a broad experience in photography, if you were to give us your one biggest lesson that you've learned in your career, what would that be?
So I think the lesson I learned recently, and I have so many lessons, and maybe I'll try to think of it and put them in that PDF that is going to be helpful. But something that came to my mind right now was that, you know, maybe many people from this group had never had that, but I know that some people have it, and maybe someone like me would watch this talk and that will open their eyes like it did to me. So it's very good to to kind of realize where you actually are as a photographer without judgment, because the thing is, what happens is we either underestimate ourselves or overestimate ourselves. In my personal experience, I overestimated myself a lot because I had lots of followers. So I was like, oh, and all my friends say it's awesome. And then one day I realized it's not really that awesome. And when I realized that, it wasn't a self-criticism. It was actually a feeling that it's not as awesome as I think. It's much better than it was 2 years ago, but it's still not there yet, not there where I want it to be. And it's not a perfectionism. It's just about seeing where you are and finding exact tools you need to boost you.
Yeah, that's so hard, because I think that it can be such a moving target. We're always improving, and finding that way to understand where we truly are with our skills. That's like, it's almost a skill in and of itself. And it is easy to get trapped in perfectionism too.
So I learned for me one tool that really helps for me. I discovered it myself. What works for me? If you create a photo, you work on it you look at it. You don't show it to anybody. You just work on it yourself and you look at it on your screen. You can take a break and walk for a little bit and then look again so you don't spend too much time thinking. And you need to be not distracted at this moment. Don't talk to anyone or just look at it. And you can close your eyes if it helps you and feel the place in your chest, like tap into your body. If you feel good, like if you feel at peace, and if you think this photograph I took, I had a goal and I think I achieved it. For example, maybe I took a photograph of my grandma and I wanted to take a photograph of my grandma so I can look at it when I'm 75 years old and it brings me this feeling of her. It doesn't matter if it's technically good or not. If that served its purpose and your heart is at peace, you can that's it. That's great. You can share that and you don't look for validation, how many people like it, what people say, because you know it's good. Some people may not even understand what it is about. It doesn't matter. But as long as you are at peace and you are fine. And another thing is, if you don't feel something is right with it, you feel like something's off, but you don't understand what is off. I would recommend take your time to understand what you don't like about it and do not ask any single person about it, because what they are going to tell you and what you are looking for, you're either looking for validation. I look for validation, but if I am not happy with it, that doesn't matter how many people will say it's awesome, I will still feel something's off.
Yeah.
What I learned is that's why I started working so slowly, is because I create an image and I look at it and I feel it. And if I feel I like it, I love it, and I post it and I share that, frankly, it's very interesting thing. I stopped caring how much attention it gets. I stopped caring if someone who's very special to me may not press like or may not write something nice, because I know I love it. That was my lesson, because before very recently, I tried to measure my success by how many people like it, or how someone I deeply care about likes it or not. But it shifted now, and I still, of course, I do love attention, and I do love when people say good things to me, just like any other person. But if I know that it's good and it's right and it's something I wanted to say, then it's this perfectionism almost goes away, because your purpose is there and that's it. That's where it is now.
Yeah. That's something that I've tried recently in some of my photos. It's hard.
Your photos are great.
But we all come to a photograph, I think, again, like you were saying, with a purpose, and whether or not we achieve that purpose is a really important measure for us. And whether or not it is outwardly validated, or honestly, even if it's like incredibly profound, almost doesn't matter. That's one of the things that I've tried to do, is like, okay, I want to test out this new technique. And if that's my goal, then my ability to achieve that technique is my only validation. And if people like it or don't like it, then that's secondary. I feel that sense of happiness, like, oh, I tried this thing and it was fun to try, and now I can do something else. But I do totally understand getting stuck in that place of like, it's only as good as other people tell me it is, and that can be such a trap. I wanted to just mention somebody's comments. Heather says, I like the idea of achieving small goals within each capture rather than always as a big technical aspect. So thank you for saying that. Very inspiring. Being happy with our own art is always the most important. Yeah, I think perfectly says what I was trying to articulate too. Yeah. So then I guess the last thing that I want to ask you as we wrap up is, one of the things that you mentioned, again, in terms of mission with your art, you're very deeply rooted in supporting like the LGBTQ community. And in Russia, that's very difficult. And so one of your goals is to be able to get back to Russia, to be able to help that community with your art. And that's something that's sort of up in the air right now as you work on getting a green card, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually found a way how to make a change without going to Russia.
Okay.
And that happened just because of that tool I just told you, when I was feeling my heart and when I was thinking about it. And I have to say, gay men were always my angels, my supportive net, my rescue, my brothers. And I always felt deep connection with them, and I still do. And every time I would see my friends having a boyfriend or a husband or adopting a child or having their own child, I felt so much joy. And I would look at it and I would say, wow, that's so beautiful. That is so beautiful. How can anyone in the world not to see that, how beautiful it is? So I asked myself a few months ago, and I wasn't even thinking about this project at all. I was thinking, what is there out there in the art that I would do to feel happy?
Mm-hmm.
What is it? And a few years ago, like 4 years ago, it was photographing ballerinas. It was my biggest goal to photograph dancers, but it's not the goal anymore. And I thought, well, I really like gay men. I love them. And I love them when they are happy, when they're together, when it's beautiful. And I thought, well, what if I share that with other people? Because I definitely see a lot of beauty and I see connection. Connection is the key word. And I also see there is not much difference in their connection than anyone else's connection. But I see it a lot. I got used to it.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my circle are gay men. And I thought, well, not everyone knows, especially people in Russia. I think most people, they don't hate. They just don't know. They don't see it. It's such a stigma in Russia that you would never see two men affectionate together in public. Unless they are doing activism and then they get arrested or beaten, and it's not something that would inspire you.
Right.
So I actually started a project. My good friend recently started a very functional, very loving relationship. And I took photographs of them and then I interviewed them, and the answers they gave me were so beautiful. So what I'm going to do within next 2 weeks, I'm going to publish my first blog post, and I'm going to do it. The project is called Pride, Not Prejudice.
So you changed the name?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I changed the name. I like this name so much more because it has the word pride in it.
Mm-hmm.
And also because a lot of people I know really like Jane Austen, so they will have the connection with it.
Yeah.
And I already have everything set up. The logo is ready, the website is ready, and all I need is to publish my first post. And there are a few more photo shoots I have lined up. So I will do it as a long-term goal, and I will do it in both English and Russian.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see what happens. For now, all I want is to share this beauty and kindness and connection and compassion that those people can bring.
Yeah.
And when I was reading these interviews with these guys who are in love, I had tears in my eyes. They were so beautiful. It was so touching, just the way they love each other and they care about each other. I just want to share that.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I love how even this, there's that big ultimate goal for you, but you found a way to take it into those small achievable steps. It's exactly like Heather said, where you take something and you break it down. So like, I can accomplish this thing and then I can accomplish this next thing. And that's how eventually maybe it'll get to that point where you are able to go back to Russia, or the project will evolve into a completely different way. And I find that so inspiring that you're willing to share kind of the nitty gritty of what your process has been like, because it's exactly like sharing that safety net that you were talking about. Not every artist shares that behind the scenes process of getting to that place that they want to go. And it's so wonderful and inspiring to hear how you're breaking down even the overall mission into those achievable goals so that you can connect with people and you can make a difference on small levels and big levels.
Yeah. I just wanted to add one small thing that came to my mind, and that is clothing. And I think it'll be helpful for other artists. So when I started photographing dancers, when I started photographing yoga, now when I started to photograph
Oh no, did we lose you, Kristina? Oh. I think we might have lost Kristina. I'm going to see if I can get her back on really quickly. All right, I sent her a quick message, and if she's able to get back on, then we'll be able to finish that wonderful thought. And if not, then we will end the broadcast here, and she'll be able to add those final thoughts to that PDF that she was going to finish up with. So I'm going to give her a couple of quick seconds. If anybody else has any questions that they want to ask her, please feel free to do so. And, obviously she will hop onto the chat afterwards. There she is. We lost you for a second. Thank you for hopping back on. So, no, it's totally fine. It's, technology has its glitches. So when I lost you, you were talking about that last thought that you had, and then it cut out. So if you don't mind starting over, I'm not sure how much of that was able to be broadcast.
Okay, so the thought that I have is that when I started photographing dancers, and when I started photographing yoga teachers, when I started doing headshots, and right now when I start my new project, the scenario, the strategy is always the same, and it was working for me, and it is something that I feel is working, and it may help someone else to start something they want to do. So it doesn't really matter if it's a business or if it's a personal project. Like my current project is a personal project. I'm not planning to earn money doing it. But you need to just start and find the first person or the first couple, or the first people who would be ready to do it. And thanks to social media, if you do a really, really decent job and you put it out there, you have a chance to attract more. Of course, when I started photographing dancers, I had such a difficulty finding the first one, because I've never photographed dancers before. I did not know where to find dancers, and I did not even know how to ask them to be photographed by me. So what I started doing, I just started talking a lot about it. I was literally sharing this with every person I met. I was obsessed with it. I was like, oh, I wish I could find a ballet dancer somewhere. And then once someone said, oh, actually, my daughter is a ballet dancer. And the only problem is she is 12. Do you want a ballet dancer who has just started? And I said, yes. Can she wear a tutu? And she said, yes, of course. She even wears pointy shoes. And I was delighted.
Yeah.
I took photographs of that girl. And surprisingly, they turned out so good that one of those photos ended up in an exhibition.
Oh, wow.
And it was a very small exhibition, but it was so special. And then, of course, that didn't happen, that thousands of ballet dancers would ask me to photograph. No. But what I could do now, I could approach other ballet dancers and start my conversation with, I really like your work. I wish we could collaborate. I photographed this dancer last month and you can see my work. Because if people can see your work, they're a little bit more convinced that they will get some work from you. And then it started growing and it started building up. And then if you photograph one ballet dancer, you can photograph their friends. You can ask if they have any friend they would like to introduce you to. If you're a nice person, it just starts building. Yeah. That's why I feel it's always hard to just start and do first couple or first interview or first thing. But you just talk to people around you and someone may help to find that first couple. And then you do a work and you put it out and you invite more opportunities. Same about headshots. I did, when I started my business, I actually did 15 promotional shoots, which were completely free of charge. But after that, clients actually started coming. It's just fair to make it very clear that this is a promotional shoot. If you come again, I will give you a discount. And if you bring a friend, maybe some other bonus. But it usually all free work. It's actually not free. It's an investment in your future projects. So that's why I'm saying that I'm very excited that my first blog post is about to be ready, because that means that more people will likely be interested to take part in this project and make it grow.
Yeah. So I think having that heart of a beginner and that mindset of a beginner is really helpful when you're beginning a new project like that. My headshot business was very much the same way in that, it was just a few people in the beginning and people for free. And I would invite my friends like, hey, I really need to practice this, and I felt safe and comfortable with them. And I didn't feel like there was pressure. So I do think that's really wonderful advice anytime you want to start a new business or just a new project. So thank you so much for your time with us today. It's been really wonderful and inspiring talking to you. And I think that, it looks like we're having more technical difficulties again. She just messaged me saying that I disappeared. So it looks like she dropped off. Oh, there you are.
Here we go.
I think this is the universe's way of telling us that we have taken all of your time that we should take today. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your being here. It's been wonderful and inspiring.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.